Uh, okay. Good morning, students. We'll start with the today's lecture. Uh, During last lecture, we started with the resource allocation. Okay. Uh, Resource allocation can be done in two ways. That is the resource smoothing and resource leveling. Okay. What is resource smoothing? That we have seen where duration is the constant, and in resource leveling, availability of the resources are the constants. Okay. Then we have seen Then we have started with the resource smoothing. Uh, it is done when duration of completion of project is the constant, total project duration remains same. In that case, we have to locate minimum demand of resources. Okay, and we have to shift the activity according to the float availability. That will be done in case of resource smoothing, which we have seen during last lecture. Okay, just we are revising whatever the part we have covered during last lecture. Then various steps involved in resource smoothing. First, list out the resources. Okay, then identify important resources, find cumulative resource requirement, then plot histogram, identify peak and low demand of resources, lower the peak and fill up the troughs, that is the low demands. Make the demand of resources as uniform as possible. Alter the time of start and finish of the activity. That activities must be a non-critical activity. Make use of float availability. Okay, that float is available only for the non-critical activities. Okay, then we have started with one numerical for which I have circulated this figure 1 and figure 2 previously. Okay, then yesterday I circulated that figure 3 and 4. In figure 1, the network is given. In the figure 1, network is given, and in figure 2, that is here, from that network, we have find out the earliest starting time, earliest finishing time, latest starting time, latest finishing time, and float. The activities for which float is 0, that are termed as the critical activity. Okay, all of you are having this table in your notebook. Okay, during last lecture we started with this table and we are completed with the explanation of first two columns. Okay, here that first column serial number, second duration in days, total project duration is 22 days. Okay, so last time I explained about the third column, how the third column will be prepared. Is it? We have to find out which activities are going on for each day. Suppose day 1, which activities are going on, that is A, B, C. That already I explained in last lecture. So we will complete with this, that is for second day, third day, fourth, fifth, A, B, C are going on. But on the sixth day, A will be completed because the duration of activity A is of 5 days only. Okay. But on sixth day, activity E will start. You see that table in figure 2. The earliest starting time of activity E will be 5. That is at the end of 5 days it will start. That is on sixth day. Okay. So again, on each day, which activities are going on, we have to find out here. Okay. So in this table, for total project duration, we will get which activities are going on. Okay, that is in column number 3. Okay, once we complete up to this column, if you are having or if you have noted this table in your notebook, then you will understand it. Okay, so if we consider first day, which activities are going on? Activity A, B, and C. If we see the figure 1, for activity A, the resource required, whatever the resource over here, that resource required are activity A, resource requires are 2. Okay, in the same way, for activity B, resource required are 3, and activity C, resource required are 3. Okay, whatever the masons may be there, skilled laborers may be there, okay, whatsoever it may be. So for each of these activity, whatever marked in column number 3, we have to mark their resources in column number 4. Okay, so up to 5 days, 3 activities going on. So their resources. At the start of 6th day, activity A will be completed, but E will start, which will require resources of magnitude 2. Okay, at the end of 8th day, that activity E is also completed and F is started. So for activity F, the resources required are 4. So we are marked over here. In the same way, we will proceed for all 22 days. In the same way, we will proceed for all 22 days. Okay, so what happened? For each of the day, we will get the total resource requirement in column number 5. How we will get? Just add the resources in column number 4. For activity A, 2, for B, 3, for C, 3. So 2 plus 3 plus 3, that is 8. Similarly, for second day, is it? Then for third day, then for fourth, fifth, sixth. See here, on sixth day, it will go on changing. As on sixth day, what happens? On a sixth day, what happens? That activity A is completed and B is started. Okay, so there the total resource requirement will be 11. Likewise, we have to find out the resource requirement for all the days. Okay, likewise, we have to find out the resource requirement for all the days. Is it? Once we find the resource requirement for all the days, विशाल शिंदे, आवाज येतोय का माझा?
हो सर येतोय.
ओके, जर काही प्रॉब्लेम असेल तर माझ्या नंबरवरती कॉल कर बरं.
हो सर.
Okay, so what do we get here? Here we will get duration in days, that is 22 days, and for each of the day cumulative resource required we will get in column number 5. Okay, so the next step, please refer the figure 4 which I have circulated to you yesterday. Okay, yesterday I have circulated you figure 4, this figure. Okay, that is nothing but a histogram. Is it? Here on x-axis, we have plotted the duration. That is 1, 2, 3, 4. Total duration will be 22 days. On x-axis, we will get the duration here. Is it? And y-axis, the resources. Here, the resource is mason. Here, the resource is mason. That is plotted on y-axis. Okay. So, we have to plot this histogram for the resource required for each of the day. For first day, resource required are 8. Second day 8, third day 8. So see here, for first day 8, it is the 8. Second day 8. Likewise, we have to plot it. So at the end, like see here, for 14th day, it will be 10. Is it? Sorry, for 14th day, it is something 7. Is it? So here, so we have to join these, we will get this histogram. Okay. Now students, carefully study this histogram. What do we get here? For each of the day, the resources required are varying very much amount. Is it? For first 5 days, okay, it is uniform. But after that, it suddenly increases for few days. Okay. After that, again it is suddenly increasing. Okay, it reached to 12. Suppose you are the owner of a construction company and you are doing this project. You are having a total, suppose 10 masons working with you. Okay, so if we see this histogram for the 22 days, what do you get? That for first 5 days, 2 masons are empty. They do not have any work. Is it? But after 5th day, that is at the beginning of 6th day, what is happening? That resource required will go on increasing, and that is beyond the 10. So in that case, what you have to do? You have to employ additional masons, is it? Though you are having 10, but you have to employ additional masons, that is up to 12. Okay. But after, see, 17th day, what happened? Again, the requirement of the mason is fall down. It is very low. On last 2 days, it is only 2. So in that case, if we consider these last 2 days, only masons required are only 2. So 8 masons are there, they are blind, but you have to pay them. So you have to optimize that resource requirement, and that is nothing but the resource smoothing. That is nothing but the resource smoothing. So how to do it? For doing this resource smoothing, first you have to identify the activities which are having a larger float. Is it? So we have prepared a table number 2 where the float availability is given to you. That table number 2 already you have noted in the netbook. If we refer that table number 2, you will get for which activity maximum float is available, that you will get over there. Okay. So what we will do here, requirement of mason from 6 to 17 day are high. Is it? From 6 to 17 days, see here, 6 to 17th day are higher, but 17th day onwards it is lower. So we have identified the peak requirement and the lower requirement, that is peak and trough we have identified. As per the steps involved in the resource smoothing, we have to lower the peak and fill up the troughs. So what we will do, by inspecting the network, we find that the activities 1, 3, that is activity B, that you will get in table number 2, and activity 3, 6, that is activity F, have a total float of 5 days. That is activity B, and activity F will have a total float of 5 days. Now students, what is meant by that float? That is that much duration is available with that activity, so the delay or the finish, sorry, the start or the finish of that particular activity can be delayed. Okay, so we can delay the start of that activity by either by 5 days, or we can finish that activity by 5 days later. Is it, if it is started on the earlier starting time? Okay, so what we will do here, the start of activity F, student please note it carefully, the start of activity F can be shifted by 5 days so that it can start on 14th day instead of 9th day. That is, start of our activity F will be a 9th day. It's 9th day, but we will shift that start of that activity by 5 days, because we are having a 5 days float available over there. Okay, so that will start on 14th day instead of 9th day. So what happens here now? If we shift that particular activity, whatever we have plotted table number 2, there what is happening? If that activity F is shifted, instead of 9th day, we will shift it by 5 days on 14th day. So here, this will be changing. This, if we shift this activity F from here to here, so that F will start from here onwards. So whatever the resource required for, that will go on changing for activity for these 9, 10, 11, 12 and 13 days. Okay, and here it will go on increasing. Okay, so again we will find out this cumulative resource requirement for the each day, and we will plot the revised histogram. Now students, you will see here this peak requirement, it is up to 12. When we plot this revised histogram, the peak requirement is up to 12. Now that will be reduced up to 11. Okay, by shifting one activity. Okay, so I think you will understood up to this part. If you are not understood, after the lecture you go through it, and if you have any queries, you raise it by next time. Okay, so we have plotted the revised histogram where we will get the lower resource requirement, or we have lowered the resource requirement where it is peak. Now we will repeat the same process. We will repeat the same process, and please remember that that will be applicable for non-critical activities only. That is the constraint for resource smoothing. Okay, so this all process is nothing but it is called as the resource smoothing. Okay, so we'll start with the next, resource leveling. Now students, sometimes what happens, that availability of the resource is the constraint. Suppose you require a 10 labor on a particular day, but only available are 8. Okay, so in that case, by delay in the activity is only the options, because here the constraint is the availability of the resources. Okay, availability of the resources. So in that case, you can delay the activities. In this case, duration of activity will go on increasing. Okay, so when we delay the activity, first we have to find out the activity with minimum duration will be chosen for the resource leveling. Okay, so these are the steps involved in resource leveling. List out the resources, find cumulative resource requirement for each unit, plot histogram, identify peak and low demand of resources. Up to this, we have studied in resource smoothing. Okay, lower the peak requirement by staggering the input on non-critical activities. This fifth point or fifth step also we have studied in resource smoothing, because here what is mentioned, lower the peak requirement by staggering the input on non-critical activities. That is, non-critical activities are shifted. Still, that resource requirement will not meet the requirement. You have to either increase the duration of critical activities or place some concurrent activities in series. That means the activities which are critical, we have to increase their duration so that the requirement of the resources will be minimum. That is one option. Or uh, we can the activities which are in concurrent, that is, which are going parallelly, okay, that we have to shift and we have to do it in a series so that the peak demand can be reduced. So these are the options available in case of resource leveling. Okay, so here what happens, project duration will go on increasing, and when we do this resource leveling, we have to rearrange the activities in descending order of float. In descending order of float, the activities which are having higher float, first they are shifted, and the activities which are having lower float, that is the critical activity which are having low float, that is the 0. So that activity at the end we have to shift. Okay, firstly lower the peak resource by utilizing float. Critical activities can be tackled or can be shifted last if required, because what, due to that the duration of your project will go on increasing. Okay, now we will see one example. Now students, I will clear you one thing, whatever the example we have seen for resource smoothing or whatever we are going to see for resource leveling, as far as your examination is concerned, such a huge or large examples are not asked in the examination, is it? Or if they are asked, only we have to carry out one trial. Okay, so to have to clear your concept, I have quoted here both of these examples. In this example, consider the network shown in figure 1. The requirement of labor for each day of each of the activities has been shown in bracket over the arrows in the network diagram. Level out the requirement of resources if the maximum number of labor on any day has to be limited to 7. See here what is given, maximum number of labor are 7. If on any day if you require a labor 8, you cannot employ the 8th labor because they are limited to 7 only. So we have to carry out this resource leveling till all the requirement of the resources is 7 or below 7. So this is the network. Okay, you just see, I will explain you how to carry out. Okay, this table from which it is prepared from that network diagram. Here we will find out the float and mark the critical activities. Okay, I will share all these after the lecture. Then we have find out the cumulative resource requirement. Just rows and columns are shifted over here, is it? Here days and activities. Okay, and the total resource required, that is the cumulative resource requirement for each of the day, that is find out over here. From that we have plotted the histogram. Okay, now see students, how the requirement of the resources very fluctuating, and the what is the constant here? Here the resource that labor available are 7 only. So we have to lower the requirement of these resources, that is the labor, below this red line. Okay, because available are 7 only. Okay, so to carry out this, the resource requirement is, see, it will be varying from 2 to 15. Minimum is 2, maximum is 15. The fluctuation in the resource demand are quite high, and there is a need for leveling up this demand. So what we do for this? Tabulate various activities in descending order of their float. Tabulate various activities in descending order. See here, descending order of the float. Maximum first, then the lower. Okay, last critical activities are there. Okay, this table you have to prepare from table number 2. Now, to carry out the resource leveling, same thing is done. Find out for which activity float available is higher. For each activity, float available is 7. So we will observe that histogram and we will shift the activity. See here, activity H has a float of 7 days. Within the float, delay the start of this activity by 4 days so that activity starts on 9th day instead of 5th day. Okay. Okay. So activity G has a float of 6 days. Shift the start of this activity by 1 day. Okay. Now you will say that, sir, how it will be done? By experience, when you have experience, you will solve number of examples, you will get that much experience. Okay. So we'll, by considering above changes, find out again cumulative resource requirement and plot new histogram. Okay. As we have shifted the activities, so we have to find out the new cumulative resource requirement, and we have to plot a new histogram. Okay, so when we find out new cumulative resource requirement, and from that we'll plot this histogram. Now see here, the resource requirement will be lower from 15. See here, it is up to 15. Okay, and now it will come up to 11. It will come up to 11. But our target is to lower it below the 7. To lower it below the 7, because the constraint is that number of labor or number of resources available only 7. Again, we have to do resource smoothing. So what is done for that? The maximum demand has come down from 15 to 11. The peak requirement of 11 is still well above the average demand. Also, there is fluctuation in demand. That is, in some of the days, huge requirement is there. In some of the days, very low requirement are there. Therefore, further leveling of resource requirement can be done for some of the non-critical activities. Okay, and see, we are still talking about the non-critical activities. After doing further leveling of, the revised histogram again plotted for that. Okay, see here, further activities are shifted and the revised histogram is plotted. Okay, so here the resource requirement in the previous case was up to 11. Now that will come up to 8. That will come up to 8. From 11 to it will coming up to 8. But still it is more than 7. But still it is more than 7. Now you will see that if you see here, for the 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, up to these days, it will be above the available resources for these 4 days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. Sorry, it is for these 5 days the resource requirement are above the available resources. So further leveling is also required. Is it? So again the further leveling is done. In that case, we can shift the critical activities also. Because if float is not available, if float becomes 0 for a critical activity, then it will be a critical activity. So in the resource leveling, that is the constraint, that duration of the project will goes on increasing. The duration of the project will goes on increasing. Okay. So here the critical activities are also shifted and the new histogram is plotted where you will get the resources 7 or less than the 7. Below the 7 you will get the resources. Okay, so now your target is achieved, we will say. Okay, so this is your the final histogram. Okay, So I think you understood both the concept, resource leveling and resource smoothing. With the help of example, I tried to get your concept more clear about both of these. When you go in the field, these are required very much. Students, I will just give one example. Suppose you are having a one building material shop, and you have to supply a cement bag to 5 of your customers. You are having a short vehicle which can supply a cement bag of 50 in each trip, and all that 5 customers need 50 cement bag in a same day. Okay, so what you will do, and if your vehicle will deliver it to 2 customer only in a day, so instead of employing additional, or instead of taking on rent 2 additional vehicles or 3 additional vehicles, you will utilize your own vehicle and you will shift the delay of that cement bag delivery to the next days. Okay, in a simple word, that is nothing but the resource leveling. Okay, or if we say the resource smoothing, if you have to supply cement bag for 5 clients in a day, so instead of supplying in the morning for all 5 clients, morning 10 a.m. you will supply for one, 12 for another, one for third, two for third, depending on how much time is required to supply that material to that client. Okay, so that is nothing but the resource smoothing. Okay, students. So we'll move to the next concept. That is nothing but the project updating. Uh, if we plan any project and if we start the project, but if there is changes, then what to do? We have to incorporate that changes. Is it not? So when you incorporate that changes, your project schedule or project duration is changed. So that is nothing but the project updating. The process of incorporating changes and replanning and rescheduling is called updating. If all activities are progressing well according to the plan and schedule, then there is no need of updating. That means updating is also necessary if there is a delay in some of the activities. I will give you one example. Suppose construction of highway is going on, and suppose for 5 days huge rainfall is there, and due to that rainfall, that 5 days all construction activities are stopped. So what you have to do? You have to shift your project or your activities by 5 days. Is it? For that, your whole network is changed. So that is nothing but the project updating. How it will done? Based on the project progress of work, and due to delays, the duration of unfinished activities are revised, and thus the network diagram is redrawn. That is, when the rainfall is started, at that time, what are the activities are going on, by how much amount that activities are delayed, that you have to find out, and you have to redraw the network. That is nothing but the project updating. Now, various reasons for changes in project plan. There are unforeseen difficulties. That means, suppose you have planned one bridge on a highway, you started the excavation, though you have done subsoil exploration, but somewhere you come across a very hard strata. Is it? So that is the unforeseen difficulties. Okay. Or natural calamities and change condition at the site project. That is, huge rainfall is there, or suppose non-availability of material is there. That may also we say that natural calamity is there. Is it? So to develop better and more detailed plans based on additional knowledge of the job. That is, suppose construction of building is going on, and in the plan some changes are suggested by the experts. To incorporate that changes, updating is done. Or if you have some additional information is available for particular activity, if you have to incorporate that information, you need to do updating. Okay, so students, please remember this point. I explain that points. Is it? As far as your examination concerned, these are important. Now, which data is required for updating? Original network you required, progress report, that is up to what stage the work is completed, that is which activities are completed and which activities are ongoing. Different charts, calculated charts, that is what next additional durations are required for the activities, new information and knowledge which will affect the duration in future. That is information or the knowledge which you have to incorporate the details of the same. Okay, so that will be required. Okay, so when to update the project? When to update the project? Is it? So, students, I think if we see, okay, when to update the project? Whenever there is a major change in the duration of any activity, sorry, whenever there is a major change in duration of any of the activity, for larger duration projects, the process of updating must be increased as the project progresses towards the completion. For larger duration, there are many difficulties which will come across, is it? So in that case, we have to frequently update whether it is going on. Okay, for small duration project, there must be frequent updating to be done while taking into consideration the latest position of execution of the project. Okay, so and in these conditions, we have to update the project. Okay, so we will see one example on the project updating, but okay, so